now, just so that I can kind of get it out of the way. So this is going to be web scraping with beautiful soup. Who I am is I'm an incoming sophomore in high school. I have a pretty big interest in computers and programming. Some of my skills are Python, which is mainly kind of what I do at an intermediate level, and then HTML and CSS, kind of like front-end web design that I've been picking up. Some other hobbies I have are Battlestone flipping or butterfly knife flipping. I kind of like to draw, and I play a lot of video games. So what is web scraping? Web scraping is kind of like where an application that you have uses a library or like some way to gather information from a website and then store it. Another similar form is like an API, but the difference is that while an API is very kind of behind the scenes in a sense, what you do with web scraping is you just gather whatever you see on a website. It's very useful for kind of like websites when API is not provided. So like smaller websites or blog posts that don't really have APIs. You can also get the most up-to-date information on websites just because sometimes an API might not be the most up-to-date, or there might be a desync, or it's just like not really what you see. And there's also plenty of other uses that I couldn't find in time. So how it works is, and these are very boiled down steps, but you get HTML code from a website, and this could be through a variety of different ways. With Python, you would use the request library. We can then filter through the code using a library to find the data we want, and can we just like move down slowly, kind of look what we want. We can then store whatever data we end up with, and then we can pass it over to our application to use it. Some examples of some web scraping are like applications where you can use it is, let's say you can use it to find a variety of different jobs across different websites. So for like LinkedIn or Indeed, if I were looking for software application jobs, I can use my web scraping abilities to go through and find like the top 10, top 20 jobs from all the sites that I've put in, and it'll return it to me in like a pretty nice, neat little window that I've set up. You can also use it to find inspirational quotes. So I know that like this year's hackathon was positivity or like mental health. And so you can use web scraping to find a bunch of like different inspirational quotes from the internet and then pass it over to your application. You can also use it to stalk celebrities on social media by scraping their latest posts. So like Elon Musk on Twitter, I can go up and find whatever he posted last and then put it into like a nice, neat little window of mine. And you can also use web scraping to answer questions or like find, it's like Googling, but bit more, how do I explain it? Like very narrow search. It's a pretty crappy way of explaining it, but my mind's a bit blinking. So a key thing about web scraping though is you need to know how to like kind of structure a URL, because a lot of web scraping requires websites. Web scraping requires websites, and so in order to find the information you want, sometimes websites already have like parameters or different like paths that you can take that kind of can narrow down your information even more, or even give you access to new information. So a lot of this is like you have your protocol, and you can ignore the stuff like HTTPS, www. Your domain name will mainly be like where you're getting your information from. And then you also have your top level domain. All that stuff is kind of like the standard of a URL. You mainly want to look at like the queries though, because with Google, if you can search up, and I mean, you can do it right now if you want. If you search up something and then you look at the search bar, you'll see like there's a really long URL, but at the end, you'll see lots of different queries. And that's how like Google finds the information you want. It filters through its large database to give you a narrowed view of what you want versus sea of information. And so I'll kind of show you how to do that today here using a Python library. And that's just because I work with. And I mean, here at this point, that's if you were just here to kind of learn what web scraping is, I mean, you are free to leave, I guess. But if you still like you want to know how to find information, then I'll be using something called Beautiful Soup. It's a Python library, and it'll let you parse HTML, which you can then sort through, kind of like following the steps of what I listed earlier. Some requirements to do this, they're not required by any means, but I do recommend them, is that you do have a basic or even an intermediate level understanding of Python. And that means like you can use variables, you know how to like, there's different types of like data. So like strings, integers, all that stuff, you kind of know that. You know how to import libraries. So if you can import Beautiful Soup and like requests, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can import, but you mainly need Beautiful Soup. And you also kind of understand code structure. And what that kind of means is like, if I give you a website, like with HTML code, you can kind of go through and find out or pinpoint what exactly you're looking for using classes and IDs to find and sort your information, and also indenting, like Python indents in code. You do need a code editor. You could use the basic built-in Python one, but I highly suggest you have your own, like VS Code or PyCharm. And I also recommend that like you can either pull up a second window if you go, or on a second monitor or something like that, where you can pull up a code editor and kind of follow along. And also another thing about the information I'm going to show, I stole all of it from a website. And so I'll have that listed near the end of the presentation. But if I did like a crappy job of explaining everything, you could be able to visit that website and it'll tell you everything that I covered here. So to download and install Beautiful Soup, you can open up a terminal or a command prompt, and you would type in pip install Beautiful Soup 4. And that, if any of you guys have worked with Python before, or you've installed any sort of libraries, you'll kind of know what this is. But pip is Python's package manager, and it's a whole collection or a whole library of different libraries that people have created. And so you would basically just be taking from Python's library and installing Beautiful Soup 4. So I'll kind of explain what all this is here, and there's like plenty of other slides like this. But to get the code from a website, we're using a Python library called requests. And what requests is it will let you get basically raw data from a website. What Beautiful Soup does it doesn't take data from a website, it sorts through it for us by using parsing and filters kind of. But what requests will do is it'll let us take information from a website, and you would use the request.get function. And so you'll see it like line 5. We store our whatever request will give us into a variable, and we pass it a URL. And what request will do is it'll kind of visit that website, gather everything on that website, all the HTML code, and then return it to us. And then we can store that however we see fit. In this case, I'm using a variable. So another thing that, so this is Beautiful Soup. Oh crap, it's in the wrong order. But Beautiful Soup has a function called prettify. And so if we're trying to display our code somehow, we can use prettify to turn like a lot of this HTML stuff. We can kind of strip it away and just get to the strings and text. And so that way our code isn't just a big mess of different HTML elements. But we can use Beautiful Soup to parse the code, and that's what it does. It creates like basically we get raw HTML code, but what request gives us doesn't have anything to it. It's just text at the end of the day. It's like you can't really sort through it because it's all text. So what Beautiful Soup does is it kind of turns it into different elements that we can sort through. And so we import requests, and then from BS4, that's also Beautiful Soup, we import the Beautiful Soup function, and that's, again, to turn it and parse it. We can pass in a website URL, and in this case, I'm using a fake jobs or a jobs listing website that was also from the website I stole. And so there's just a bunch of different jobs that you can kind of use to scrape as an example. So we pass it through Beautiful Soup, and then we also use HTML.parser, and that basically tells Beautiful Soup what kind of code we're trying to give it. So in most of the websites made up of HTML. So when you tell an HTML parser, it knows that you're using HTML and it parses for HTML. So Beautiful Soup has a function called find. And so in that top example, you'll see that there's soup.find. And if I go back to the last one, you'll see I assigned a variable to my Beautiful Soup parse, and that was soup. And so this one will find anything with the ID results, or the first thing with the ID results container in the website. And if any of you guys have ever done, like inspected element or kind of like done something to mess with your friends where you use the inspect element, you'll kind of know that HTML has like these different sections and there's like different containers and divs. So it'll go through and it'll just find the first one that it finds. And you can keep like moving down and down, and you'll see that eventually if you visit the website. And here, I'll post it in the chat so some of you guys can try it. But if you go over to the website, and then you open up inspect element, you go to section, and you kind of scroll through the entire thing. You can open up all the trees, but it'll find the first div, whatever, that has the ID of results container, and then it'll return it to us. And then that second example on the bottom will find the first set like title with the H2 element, or the first H2 element with the class title. Sorry. You can also find, like, do a really bulk search. So if there's like multiple of a certain title that I want, I just like, if there's a bunch of quotes, right? All of them have different paragraphs elements, and I don't want one, I want them all. I could do something like a bulk search, and that's find all. In this case, what it will do is it'll find all the divs containers with the class of card content. So if you go back to the website, then you'll see that there's like a couple of them, and any div container that has the class card content will be scraped and then get passed back to us. And so you can also like pass this into, let's say if there's another website with, here, if I can whip out something. There's like a P. Let me just swap screen here. So you'll see that, like, let's say this is our website, and this is what Beautiful Soup will basically give us is HTML code. And so you'll see it on a website, you might have like a bunch of different quotes. If we were to use the find function, then what it would do is it'll give us this first quote here. But if we use the find all, it'll give us everything in here, if that makes any sense. And so that's one way you can use Beautiful Soup to find certain bits of data on the internet. Back to my presentation. Here it is. We can use both of these to find ourselves data on a website. And I'm grossly oversimplifying. Like, you'll have to do a lot more than just one or two find or find alls, right? There's like plenty of other different things you kind of have to sort through and find to get to what you want. And so a completed, very like basic variant or scraper would be something like this. I also stole this from the website I was using. But what it does is we get our URL here, and this is the fake job site that I kind of showed everyone. And this is the HTML code. This will get your HTML code. Beautiful Soup will parse it. And then this is where we'll find all of our jobs. It will look for a element, HTML element with the ID of results container. And then from there, we can actually even like filter it even further by using the results.findAll. And this will find all the divs inside my results container here with the class of a card content. And then we can print it if you want to see like just a raw HTML code. But what we can do is we can actually filter it even more by finding the title of the job, right? And each one of these you'll see has its own class, its own like ID, and that's kind of a standard in web development. Is you do have like a lot of different IDs, and you number and you basically assign or somehow like classify each element. And so you'll see like a lot of websites on the internet will do this. And so then we can find the title, we can find what company it's with, we can find the location of whatever job we're looking for in this case. And then we can print it all. And you would want to use the variable.text here just because, again, this is HTML code, we want text. And so now if we run this code, you'll see that we get a bunch of different like companies and locations and job titles. And so that's basically what you can do with Beautiful Soup. And you get all of this from the website that I pointed at. All right. And so, yes, this was like grossly oversimplified. I mean, I'll admit this presentation was really, really rushed, but I kind of hope you guys took something. And I know I didn't cover like how you can use the data, but there are like plenty of different ways you can apply the data that you scraped to an application that you have. So some examples that I have listed here would be like a Discord bot. I mean, there's like plenty of Discord bots already that have inspirational quotes, or like quote bot or whatever, right? But you can make one that'll scrape the web like every morning, find some inspirational quotes, and then if someone runs a command, it'll give you a new quote. You can also do a news collector, and this one's a bit more practical, so to speak, but it'll like, you can scrape the top headline from every major news network, like Washington Post, New York Times, The Sun, they all have their own websites. So what you can do is you can go to their websites, find whatever article they have listed already, scrape it, and kind of like, again, filter through it, kind of like how we filtered through jobs and descriptions and whatnot, find like just the content on all that, and then pass it on to either like a website or just another bot, which you can then use to view all these top articles from these different sites and news networks. And here are all the sources I've used for the most part. That's mainly about it. If anyone's got any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. It was really rushed, so I apologize if like you're left with a bunch of gaps or misunderstandings. So if anyone's got any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer. So for a beginner to learn Python, it kind of depends what route you want to take. There's plenty of different like ways to learn, so to speak. I personally recommend just trying to jump into it, get yourself a small project going. And that could be like a video game. I've made plenty of like console RPGs, so to speak. But you just kind of want to jump into it. There's plenty of great books online. That's also another great way to learn. YouTube is a great resource, in my opinion. You can search up like beginner Python tutorials or specifically like how to do something in Python, and that's just a great way to get yourself like just jump in. Is pretty much all I can say. Also, yes, W3 Schools is a really great website. Thanks, John. But it kind of depends where you want to go at it. I mean, the internet has a lot of information. I mean, you could use web scraping to help you find sources. That's kind of, yeah, there's not really a definitive answer on how you can start. Is there any other questions? And I mean, if you want, you can just unmute your mic and ask right away. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that bad. If not, then this is kind of it. There's not much else to show. I can go back to any slides or whatnot, but yeah. I mean, thanks for coming. This is my first time doing something like this. Yep, and there's also a free swag. So if you go to the if you go to the form that was posted and you fill it out, you'll be entered into a raffle kind of giveaway deal where you can earn some free Hack United stuff. So other than that, thanks for coming. And if you have any other questions for me or anything, you can ping me in the Discord server. My username is Melatonin. So happy to answer any questions. Other than that, yeah. Thanks for coming. Yeah.